Hello and a very warm welcome to Talking Germany, the show where we do just that. My guest today is one of the top anchors on our news programmes here at DW TV. She might be new to some of you, but for most of our viewers, she's a very familiar face indeed, and she is the delightful Birgit Keller. Birgit, thank you very, very much for you giggling away here, yeah? Birgit Keller, DW TV news anchor. What do you most enjoy about your job?
I think I most like going into makeup. That's just before a news show. All the stress lies ahead, or you've already put it behind you and it's a moment to reflect. It's a chance to consider whether everything's correct. And I'd say these are the most relaxing moments, and that's why I like them so much.
And when you get in front of the camera, what excites you about the job?
I'd
say it's the moment when I actually present the news. You might be the centre of attention, but you're fully aware that there's a team behind you, that it's all down to teamwork. I'd be nothing without the team, and I have to do a good job. I have to do it well, and I have to write my intros so everyone can understand them. I'm in a prominent position, and you could say that I represent the editorial team.
Okay, you're presenting news, but you're not just presenting news, you're presenting DW TV news. What is special, what is different about DW TV news?
Our primary aim is always to represent the German view of something. That means our approach is to encourage intercultural dialogue, to look at an event and say this is how we see it, but also to report on it objectively so the viewer can form his own opinion. That means highlighting different aspects, different arguments. I think that's important to us.
You say German. Are we talking here German or European?
I've asked myself the same question. I also increasingly see myself as a European. I think that's great, this idea. I think it's fantastic to be able to say that we are Europeans and we also have a common history. And I asked myself exactly the same question during this year's European elections. Are we Germans or are we Europeans? And it's certainly heading the latter way.
Okay, German news, European news, international news. That set the scene. Time now for a day in the life of Birgit Keller at DW TV.
Lights, camera, but first makeup. That's where Birgit Keller starts her workday at DW TV just after 7 in the morning. As a news presenter, her schedule is 1 week on, 1 week off.
I better hurry, I've got lots of news to write.
Birgit writes her own scripts before each show. An inquisitive nature and an interest in the world led her into a career in journalism. She grew up in communist East Germany, and her thirst for information grew ever greater after the fall of the wall. In 1992, she started training to become a journalist. 2 years later, she first anchored a TV program.
So, here we go.
Just before airtime, Birgit reviews the rundown one last time. She sits alone or with a co-anchor in the studio and communicates with the control room on an intercom system. There are no technicians in the studio. The cameras are remote controlled.
Hier ist das Journal von DWTV aus Berlin. Ich bin Birgit Keller. Guten Tag.
A team of technicians and producers put the show on the air. Pre-prepared reports and interviews are played back from the server, and the timing is monitored second by second. Birgit anchors DW TV's news program Journal in German every other hour, as well as the show's in-depth segment. In her free time, Birgit frequents cozy cafes, but she can't stand boredom. She likes her job on camera because of its positive stress. When she's on air live, she has to be ready to expect the unexpected. Her family, most of all her 2 daughters, are happiest when she finally arrives home after a long day at work. Today, she's our guest on Talking Germany, Birgit Keller.
Birgit, I thought it was interesting when we were talking about sort of the values that Deutsche Welle subscribes to. You said that there are objective values. Are you sure that there's news objectivity in the modern world?
Of course, it's always difficult, especially in a rolling news context. But I think it's very important not to adopt any kind of stance. In news programs, for example, we don't issue any kind of comment. It's just about reporting on what's happening at the time. I can remember after the terrorist attacks on the United States, we started naming the sources of information. It really set something in motion that has continued to this day. In other words, of course you report on all the various positions, but as a journalist, you try not to express any kind of personal view on the matter. As for the truth, I myself don't know what's true. You have to be very careful with this. Every viewer should, of course, form his or her own opinion. And that's really our job, to try and put together a report with all the arguments, so the puzzle becomes a picture, and the viewer can make up his or her mind.
Die Argumente zu sammeln, dass sich aus diesem Puzzle letztendlich ein Bild formt, dass der Zuschauer sich eine eigene Meinung bilden kann.
Is there a German way of doing news?
I would say there is a special German approach. We at DW always try and explain certain things. We're not just watched by German viewers. We broadcast worldwide, and that means we have to offer more specific explanations of certain concepts. We always try and take the viewer by the hand, so that he or she doesn't lose their way and end up not understanding what it's all about.
Den Zuschauer immer an die Hand nehmen, dass nicht irgendwie verloren geht und am Ende nicht mehr weiß, worum es geht.
Do you want the viewers to like you?
Of course, yes. I think so. If they didn't like me for some reason, that would be a bad thing. Not that I expect people to love me, but I'd be happy if they were pleased to see me on screen.
Aber dass sie sagen würden, ach, da ist sie wieder, schön sie zu sehen, das würde mich schon freuen.
Is being a good presenter something you can learn, or is it something that, is sort of what you're born with?
Ich glaube, bestimmte Sachen
I think in certain respects you've either got it or you haven't, but of course you can develop your skills. It would be terrible if anchors were not given credit for improving. You don't become a brilliant anchor overnight. There are, of course, developmental stages, but whether or not you have a screen presence, I think that's something you're born with to a certain extent.
Okie dokie. I know this from my own experience. When one is reading the news, when one is anchoring a program, you can have days where there's going to be a bomb explosion somewhere, a bus crash somewhere, a fire in another city. You might have 7 minutes of reading about these kind of catastrophes, these kind of tragic events. Does that really get under your skin? Does that bug you?
Ja.
Yes, but I always try and remain professional. That means I'm not showing any emotion, even if I feel like crying. And of course, there have been moments during our reports when I just wanted to cry, absolutely. Beslan, for example. I remember it. We reported live the whole time, just like many other events, but I just happened to be there on that day, and I really wanted to cry. If you've got kids yourself, you just think, oh my God.
It can be depressing. It goes on for days on end sometimes.
Yes, that's right, and it really does get under your skin. I remember I followed all the developments, read everything. Even years later, I read books by Russian authors writing about the event, about black widows, etc. Yes, you're right. There are certain events that stay with you, and you feel a need to keep going back to them.
Talking about news events, historic events, Germany is this year celebrating 2 decades of the fall of the Berlin Wall, which led to Germany became a reunified country. How unified is Germany?
I think we're making good progress. I can remember when the wall fell, many people said it'll take 2 generations, and that'll probably be the case. I think I've also been lucky to have grown up in a generation that saw the fall of the wall come at just the right time. I wasn't too old. I was still young enough to make full use of the opportunities that came my way following this event, and use them I did. There are, of course, losers, it must be said. Especially people who were older, who perhaps didn't have the courage to start afresh in their working lives, or didn't have the opportunity, or who were so influenced by the system that they didn't rise to the challenge. But I think we're making good progress. We are already reunited. I mean, we've long been reunited. Of course, there are still problems, but we're doing okay. And it won't be long before there won't be anyone left questioning the idea.
Keinen mehr geben wird, der sagen wird, wie jetzt.
More on this subject shortly. This summer, Birgit went back to her hometown Schwerin in the heart of eastern Germany to root around in her past, and this is what she came up with.
Birgit Keller was born and brought up in the city of Schwerin. Almost 2 decades after the fall of the Berlin Wall, she decided to pay her hometown a visit. The capital city of the state of Mecklenburg-Vorpommern has gotten a makeover since German reunification. When Birgit was young, she lived with her family in Schwerin's Old Town. Back then, many of the houses were dilapidated, but they've since been refurbished. Before 1989, this was the pride of Schwerin, a prefab concrete housing project. Today it's a bit run down, but at the end of the 1970s, Birgit Keller's family was happy to move into one of the brand new apartment buildings. No more coal heating, a modern bathroom and a bedroom for each child. Birgit used to live in one of these high rises. She was able to find the actual apartment.
Hello, my name is Birgit Keller. I used to live here. Can I come in for a moment?
Hello.
Each apartment has the same layout. This was Birgit Keller's room until just before the fall of the wall in 1989. The housing project, called the Großer Dresch, was once Schwerin's most densely populated neighborhood with more than 60,000 residents. Today, only 20,000 live there. Many of the now modernized apartments are too expensive in a city with high unemployment. The prefab buildings are unrecognizable, but many people are still leaving for better jobs in Western Germany. The birth rate is declining, and many families have moved to new homes in the countryside. Those who've stayed are mainly elderly. The city has provided recreation centers to keep them from leaving too. Last stop, the Folklore Museum in the district of Moers. Birgit belonged to a fashion group here in the 1980s that did embroidery from old patterns and designed new styles as well.
20 years ago, I used to come here too.
Even then, East German television had Birgit Keller on their radar.
Kleider für festliche Gelegenheiten sind
Clothing for festive occasions are the highlight of this collection, designed and sewn by the many skillful hands of the fashion group Schwerin Moers.
Today, Schwerin is changing. Many homes and storefronts have been remodeled to attract more tourists. A revitalized Schwerin has even drawn former residents back to their hometown.
I thought that word at the end of the report there was very interesting, a revitalised Schwerin. What's the mood like in the town these days? Are people looking positively to the future, or do people have anxieties? Do they have worries about the future?
Well, if you take a walk in Schwerin, it does strike you it's a place with a relatively high proportion of elderly residents. The youngsters are moving away. There are just too few jobs there, and that's essentially the problem. Schwerin is doing a great deal to boost the economy. It's trying to encourage companies to stay and to offer attractive employment opportunities. But young people are still opting to move away because wages and career prospects are simply better in other places, primarily in the West.
Let's talk about the people who are going away in a second. I'm very interested in what happened in a lot of East German towns like Schwerin. A lot of the better jobs were taken by people from the West in the period after the wall came down. Was that the case in Schwerin?
That was also the case in Schwerin, and I think it was a mistake. But then again, who is to know? It was a unique situation in history. The first problematic step was removing leadership figures from positions of power for political reasons, then replacing them with people from the West who apparently knew what they were doing. But of course, they had to find their way as well. And I think that damaged the self-esteem of Eastern Germans to a certain extent, because as far as they were concerned, they were being organized by people brought in from the West. This is a situation that's still in flux. Of course, it's better now, and there are more and more people living in the eastern states who are in positions of power. But I think that was a very difficult period. Removing Eastern Germans from positions of power sent out the wrong signal.
kann ich es noch...
A lot of the people outside Germany, you know, people who don't even speak German, they've heard these phrases that we use in Germany so often, the Ossi and the Wessi. Are they useful or useless terms in the debate about the kind of things you're talking about?
Also ich glaube in Berlin, in der Hauptstadt.
I think here in Berlin, the capital of Germany, you don't really hear those words anymore. I mean, I don't know what you think, but East and West don't really matter here anymore. Because there are so many people living here from foreign countries, from places all over the world. I think if you live in the provinces, perhaps, those prejudices are still there. The arrogant Wessi, for example. But I think that people who still use these terms are in the minority, because Germany has already grown together.
Diese Begriffe noch benutzt, weil Deutschland doch schon zusammengewachsen ist.
Okay, you're talking about, let's go back to Schwerin, all these people who are leaving the town. A lot of them are the more talented, younger, more dynamic people. A lot of them are young women. Yeah. Were you one of those people?
Na, ich bin damals auch aus Schwerin weggegangen.
Yes, I also left Schwerin back then. My first stop was Berlin. I really wanted to live in a big city like Berlin, so I could secure an interesting career foothold as well. And I think many women in the new Eastern German states thought the same thing, and simply seized the opportunity to improve themselves in the West. There was quite simply a larger range of job opportunities, and that's why they went, yes.
Und deshalb gegangen sind, ja.
Okay, we have talented young women there. Women are doing better at German schools these days. Women are doing, in many instances, better than the men at German universities. Who, Birgit, are the... Change of subject coming up here, and it's an obvious one, but who are better at DIY, at home improvements? Women or men? Getting the drill out and drilling a hole in the wall. Come on, who's better?
Oh, das weiß ich nicht.
Oh, I don't know. Probably still the men, but we women are catching them up. And of course, I would say that women are also handy with machinery and tools.
Okay. One test question for our very own Birgit Keller. In your family, do you have a toolbox?
Yes, of course. Two
toolboxes, yeah?
Yeah.
Where are they?
At our house, they're in the storage closet and used by both of us.
Die werden auch von beiden genutzt.
You've passed the test, Birgit. Let's go on to something much, much more serious. It's often said, let's go back to East Germany, because I'm interested in this. It's often said that women in East Germany could play a much fuller role in society than women in present-day reunified Germany. I often hear that from East German women. Is it true? You should know.
Möglicherweise ja. Also,
that's quite possible, yes. If you think that only 4% of the top jobs are held by women, that certainly has something to do with it.
Führungspositionen nur in weiblicher Hand sind, dann hat das schon was damit zu tun.
You're talking about present-day Germany now,
yeah.
the Federal Republic. Okay.
Genau.
4% is the figure you're quoting at me.
Genau.
Okay.
4% in den Chefetagen.
Exactly. 4% of the country's top managers are women, all the rest are men. And that's all due to networking. Men quite simply have better contacts. They do things differently somehow. But to come back to your question, I think women in the eastern states have this potential because they never had to choose between career and family. They learned how to juggle everything right from the outset. I grew up in a family with a mother who was working full-time. Both parents of all the children at my school were working full-time. You just had to manage it somehow. And it made people into talented multitaskers. On the one hand, you had the children. Of course, the childcare situation was completely different back then. It was easier to combine work and family. And as I said, women in East Germany did not have to decide between the two.
Daher haben Frauen in der DDR, wie gesagt, nicht vor der Entscheidung gestanden, entweder oder.
You're quoting this 4% figure at me, but when we go back to the good old East Germany, where everything, at least maybe this aspect of life was better, when I look at the pictures of East German leaders, the top notch in East German society, there are a lot of not very sexy men.
Is it different today?
No, I'm not talking about but it's the same thing. The women weren't running East Germany.
Ja, obwohl ich muss natürlich dazu sagen,
yes, I have to add that even in the former East Germany, women did not generally occupy positions of power. There were, of course, exceptions, but in areas that were stereotypical. The fact that women are forging ahead into power is a process that will hopefully continue. And I hope that 4% figure will be dispensed with at some point. And perhaps women will one day be on an equal footing with men.
Okay, you say the key to progress for women is networks. Do you have networks? Yeah?
Yes, one does have networks, but maybe as... Well, I can only speak for myself.
Oder ich kann nur von mir sprechen, ja.
I don't have networks. I'm a man. I don't have a network.
Ich meine, es geht, ich weiß
Okay, in my case, it's not that I want to be the boss or anything, but I do want to be able to live my life, and work and family are a part of that.
That's the key to it, isn't it? Because in Germany, I do think women have very full rights, but at some stage, it's a German speciality. At some stage, the German women say, I want to live my life. I don't want to spend 14 hours a day running a committee or running a company or whatever.
Ja, da mag was Wahres dran sein. Also das
yes, there may be some truth in that. I mean, being the boss means you're responsible for a lot of people, and that adds up to a good deal of stress. I think bosses these days must have plenty of sleepless nights. And for that reason, I can imagine that many women say it's not for them. That they say, I want to have a family or a career that stimulates me and challenges me in some way, but not for 18 or 24 hours a day.
Aber eben nicht 18 oder 24 Stunden am Tag.
Ha! You have it now. It's time for me to remind you that we also have a Talking Germany website where you'll find all the blogs I've been writing about my guests, including Birgit.
If you like Talking Germany, you can find out more on the internet. Our host Peter Craven is keeping a blog on the many shows and guests of the series. Find out more about what happens behind the scenes, gossip, experiences, and how the whole show is put together. Just visit blogs.dw-world.de/Talking Germany, and you can tell us what you think about the program there too.
Time now for the quiz, the quick quiz. Birgit, are you an Ossi or a Wessi?
Both.
Schwerin or Berlin?
Berlin.
Would you rather hold the ladder or be at the top of the ladder?
Oh, in the middle.
Women had a better deal in East Germany or women have a better deal now?
Now.
News is subjective or objective?
Objective.
When you go home, do you forget the news or is it still in your head?
It's still in my head.
Okay, that's been Birgit, our news presenter here at DWTV. Interesting guest. If you've enjoyed our company as much as I have, come back next week. Tschüss!